me is Andrew Scabell. Andrew's a property advisor and a licensed estate agent, as well as being a member of the REIV. Andrew's been in the industry for around 25 years and he's worked in retail, commercial and residential sales. Andrew turned into assisting clients purchasing and selling their own homes probably about 10 years ago, and during his time he's transacted about $150 million worth of real estate, so quite an achievement.
Doesn't work.
Samma Real Estate, formerly Synergy BSM, around 8 years ago. So welcome to Andrew.
Okay, thanks, Sam. Yeah, for those also who are not familiar with Sam, Sam is the department head for the property management of Samma Real Estate, and she's also a member of the REIV. Samantha has worked in the real estate sector since 2009, starting as an assistant property manager, working her way up to her current senior position. Sam commenced working with Samma Real Estate, which is again formerly Synergy BSM, in mid-2017, and she comes to us with a wealth of experience and is a real asset to the property management team.
Thanks, Andrew. So just the reasoning behind this webinar is over the last few months, Andrew and I, with regards to sales and property management, have received common questions from clients, especially with regards to the current environment due to COVID-19 and how that's affecting obviously both rentals and sales. So as a company, we discussed it and we thought it was beneficial that, okay, if clients have already spoken to had particular questions that were reoccurring, there's obviously other clients out there that may have the same questions. Obviously, it's unprecedented times, so we thought it best that we could hold a webinar, which people might find obviously quite beneficial with regards to any common questions they might have. So we'll kick things off, and Andrew and I will be asking each other questions with regards to the current environment during this webinar. And as mentioned, there is a chat section on the bottom of your screen. If you have a question during the webinar, which we have not addressed, you can type the question in there. Larissa Cable, who's a property manager, with us, she'll be noting the question and we'll be able to come back to you after the webinar. But firstly, Andrew, I'll start with what are we currently experiencing by way of, buying and selling in the current marketplace? Since probably the end of March, things have really kicked off. So what's currently happening?
Okay. So for us, it's the marketplace really changed. March was a normal month. We're starting to hear a lot about what was happening overseas as far as the COVID lockdowns, etc. We weren't really exposed to it. And then came April, we were obviously put into lockdown and were to isolate, etc., etc. That had a really big impact on going forward. So we had a bit of a crisis point there because decisions had to be made from people who were on the market because they'd had auctions pre-committed to, etc. So those had to be changed to being private sales. And then there was a whole lot of work around inspections and sanitising to the point where for about 48 hours, the government actually said that there was not going to be any inspections so that no one could actually even turn up and inspect a property. The REIV lobbied the government quite hard within that sort of 24 hours, 48 hour period. And that helped because there ended up being inspections on a invitation basis and pre-organised inspections. So then we actually started to claw back some of those sales, and just a bit different because people were still actively buying. Obviously, a lot of people had decided to stop. And then on top of that, vendors who were wanting to put their properties on the market had also decided to take a break. And then current environment that we've got at the moment, talking to some agents recently, they're experiencing stock shortages, which is, this time, same time last year. So we're talking about 40% on market, which is a 60% reduction, which is quite sizable. We should hopefully see that starting to come back slowly, as things start lifting.
And with yourself meeting clients and viewing properties, in the last few weeks, assisting them in trying to find the right property to purchase, have you seen a significant difference in the amount of less prospective purchasers also attending those viewings, or there's still a high amount of buyers out there that are going to open for inspections, which are now still being conducted, or is it all going virtual?
Yeah. Look, I think there is interest in the market, and that could be a case of people just having time on their hands. But when we're talking about people actually looking to buy, there's some real issues around finance at the moment, because the banks are really scrutinising quite hard applications for finance, with their main focus on job security, which obviously is impacting inspections, and also impacting sales.
Yeah. So for investors out there who are thinking of selling their investment property, or they're looking to sell their principal place of residence and purchase another one, is it the right time, or should people be holding off?
Look, I think it's an individual case. We look at it and say that if you're not in a position where you need to sell, it's probably best that you just get yourself prepared, as in, your properties always have got things that you can do, some painting, gardening, decluttering, taking stuff to tip, donating, etc. This is a time to do it, and then get yourself ready, because our feeling, and to myself and also talking to the market, is we should start seeing some activity coming back in about September. So look, and that's not unrealistic anyway, because this time of year in Melbourne, people tend to, when the borders were open and people travelling internationally, so they'd go on holidays from July to say August anyway, but this time they're here. So what we're doing is saying to people, if there's no urgency, get yourself ready, start talking to people like stylists who also can help you with getting your property ready. So take the time to get yourself ready. So as far as selling's concerned, probably best to just hold off a bit. But look, I think it's in an individual case. If you're in a situation where you have to sell, there is absolutely the ability to do things off market, and there are people around, but I think your price expectation will have to meet the market.
Thank you. And with regards to property values, due to everything that's been happening in the last 3 months or so, are values plunging, or they're stable? What's the current situation?
Yeah, look, there's, again, individual properties, family homes, houses with land, also areas that are close to CBD tend to have a better chance of selling, and at a reasonable price. When you start pushing out into some of the suburbs where there might be a lot of property on the market, that's going to have some impacts on prices. What we're seeing is the March quarter, which was previous to the COVID lockdowns, we saw annual price changes or quarterly changes. We saw Victoria, Melbourne, mainly CBD type areas, increasing by about 3.7%, 4%. Those have since April, and we're talking now the June quarter, the figures are now saying that we're probably seeing about a 5% reduction on prices as well. So look, we all saw recently the media tend to get their claws into negative news. I mean, when I saw the papers saying that we were going to experience a 30% reduction in house prices this year, that to me was quite concerning, because I don't believe that it was actually accurate. And it's actually quite funny, because now we're hearing that the economists who were saying that it was going down by 30% have now revised, 2 weeks later, because that's about the period it's taken, and are saying that we've probably seen 5%, which is what we've experienced, and possibly there's going to be a 10% reduction overall for the year. So, that's within expectations. But also, if you take in consideration that we've had such a good move in upward pressure on prices over the last, say, 5 years, to the value of about 30% increases overall, if you've been in the market for 5 years, to come off 5-10%, you're still fairly well ahead of where you would have been. It's just really about the period of when you actually purchased. And then, our philosophy is always about holding. You just got to hold, ride it through.
Yeah, so not as severe as originally predicted.
No, and look, and we're quite confident where, with the ages and all that, we're seeing listings coming through again. People are starting to hold off until, as I said, about the September. People are on market at the moment, but we should start seeing some more quality product coming back on the market later on in the year. And also, too, with that, the banks will also start seeing some confidence, start releasing money into the marketplace as well.
Lovely. Thank you, Andrew. So if anyone has further questions with regards to sales for Andrew, they can be emailed through and Andrew will come back to you. Even if you would like to email through a contact number, if you prefer to have a chat over the phone, Andrew is more than happy to have a discussion with you around those matters as well. So thank you. Thanks for that.
All right, your turn.
My turn.
Sam, as you know, we've been experiencing what I call uncharted waters, and the rental market has definitely been impacted by that due to job losses and in turn vacancies, etc. So it is a different landscape that we're all experiencing, and landlords especially. So some of the questions that we've had are, in the case of tenants wanting to request rent reductions, how do we go about that when they're actually requesting a rent reduction?
Okay, so over the past few months, and it has quietened down with regards to rent reduction requests from tenants, but we've established a procedure whereby the tenant may call us to have an initial conversation over the phone. We then email the tenant what we've called a hardship application form, and basically if you've got 3 tenants living in a property, living in a house, each tenant has to fill in one individually and send it back to us with supporting documents. So that basically, that form just summarises the tenant's current situation. Okay, have they completely lost their job? If they've just had their hours reduced, what have they been reduced to? They also send through a letter from their employer confirming that their hours have been reduced and what they've been reduced to. And that's just supporting documentation to show their situation. We then process that hardship application form, and that's when we get in touch with the individual owner to inform them of what the tenant has requested and their situation as a whole. Now, it's important to note that, we being the managing agent, we're not advocating that an owner give a certain amount of reduction. We're keeping in mind that we're obviously aware of a tenant's situation because they're filling in that hardship application form, but the COVID-19 situation has had a big impact on everyone. Okay, so we don't assume to know an owner's financial situation. So we will simply provide the owner with all the relevant information, what the tenants are requesting. It's then up to the owner to assess their own expenses and what they can afford, if anything, by way of a discount. We also remind owners that, when you're looking into this and making a decision, it's important to keep in mind any outgoings that you have to pay. If you own an apartment, you'll have owner's corporation fees that need to be paid quarterly. So you'll have to factor that in. Will I still be able to cover the owner's corporation fees if I'm discounting the tenant's rent to X amount? Basically, we then have that discussion with the owner, and obviously a counter offer of a discount can be made from the owner to the tenant, which we then go backwards and forwards and negotiate. And then once an agreement is reached, we obviously have that implemented on our end and have it clearly reflected that it is a rent discount due to COVID-19. That will show on your statement as well for future reference. It's just really important though that owners don't feel pressured into giving a discount if they're still not able to cover their own costs. And like I said, we're not advocating a certain amount. We have had recent dealings with Consumer Affairs because the whole process with regards to tenants being in arrears or discount negotiations have changed. And Consumer Affairs have informed us that depending on the situation, and this is just an average, but the average rent discount is around 30% of the monthly rent. That's not for every single property. Every property is a different situation. Obviously, if you've got 3 tenants living in a property and only 1 tenant has been affected work-wise and is requesting a discount, you may not look at giving the tenants 50% off the monthly rent, as obviously, basically, they're paying a 33% share each. So a 50% discount on the monthly rent wouldn't be warranted. So the situation is very different with regards to each property, each owner, how many tenants there are. But basically we're just acting as the messenger between the tenant and landlord and tenant to try and find the best outcome.
So there's obviously a process in place, and so it's really important to work with your property manager and management team to negotiate on your behalf, because that's what you were there for.
Yep.
So in the case where the tenants have requested and have just decided upon themselves just on not paying rent,
yes.
where do we go to from there?
Okay, so yeah, you are still covered as a landlord. Again, you mentioned the media earlier, and I think that's put a lot of stress on landlords, which is why we've had, recurring questions surrounding this. You still have rights as a landlord. If you come to an agreement with your tenant with regards to a discount on rent and they do not stick to that agreement, they default on it, we are still able to take steps to cover you, okay? So at the moment, we can't send a 14-day notice to vacate to a tenant for arrears. That option has been removed, obviously from VCAT Online. But what we can do instead is we can contact Consumer Affairs. We lodge a dispute resolution request with them. We inform them of what the situation is. We came to an agreement with the tenant for X amount. They have defaulted on that sum. Consumer Affairs will then contact the tenant to discuss, as well as contacting us to discuss. And if the matter can't be resolved, they will forward the matter to the Dispute Settlement Centre, okay? Failing it being resolved at the Dispute Settlement Centre, it will still be referred to VCAT for a hearing. So there are still steps that can be taken. Tenants can't just not pay rent. Yeah. We are still able to take steps to cover our owners, especially those that have landlord insurance, because if you need to make a landlord insurance claim for loss of rent or rent default, we have to be able to show the steps that we've taken in order for you to be covered and be paid out for any loss of rent. So the steps are still there, they're just different to what they were in mid-April.
So the good thing to know is that landlords, regardless, have still got rights, and
yes.
that's important to know. And again, the property management team are here to represent their client, which is the landlord. So that's good to know. So in the case of the tenants vacating, because I know now there's some laws around the tenants not, sort of giving notice.
Yes.
And what period of notice do they have to give if they're going to vacate?
If they're going to vacate. So standard, if they're on a periodic tenancy, so just month by month, they're still required to give the 28 days notice. If they're facing severe financial hardship and they're on a fixed term tenancy, and even by way of, a rent discount, they can't afford to remain in the property, they are able to break their lease by giving 14 days notice. Okay, so that's what Consumer Affairs Victoria and VCAT Online have implemented, but that's in the case of extreme financial hardship, where even a rent discount won't assist the tenants in staying in the property. There's a few other new laws that have been implemented. So currently, notice of rent increase has been removed. So that's from end of March through the end of September. So for 6 months, regardless if your tenants are impacted by COVID or not, and are requesting rent relief, we can't, as agents, send any rent increase notices to your tenants on your behalf. Other than that, normal notice to vacate. So if you ask your tenant to vacate, which is classified for no reason, which is 120-day notice, that has also been removed. The general notice to vacates as well for end of fixed term tenancy have been removed. So there's only certain ways in which you're able to ask a tenant to vacate, even if it doesn't relate to the pandemic or anything like that. But you can still negotiate that with your tenant. So I had a situation recently where an owner requires possession of the property back because a family member needs to move in. I called the tenants initially because obviously we aim to do that regardless, but we don't like to just send a notice to vacate to the tenants out of the blue. We like to have an initial conversation. I just informed them of the situation and why the owner requires possession of the property back, and asked if they would be agreeable to vacating on a certain date in the future. They were responsive to that and understood the owner's reasons why he required the property back, and an agreement was reached. Okay, so we didn't end up having to send that notice to vacate to the tenants. A private agreement was reached. We negotiated with them being able to give maybe 2 weeks notice in return if they found another suitable property to rent before that designated date that they agreed to be out by, and the owner was agreeable to that, the tenants were agreeable to that, so we've been able to navigate the situation regardless of the notice to vacate.
So that's important to know that, again, solutions are about discussions and
yes.
having open discussions and honest discussions, and,
yes.
and outcomes certainly can come from that.
That's correct.
So in the case of where someone's vacated a property,
yes.
Talk to me about the environment at the moment, about releasing and what you guys are experiencing in the marketplace as far as vacancies, etc.
Yes, so there are more properties advertised naturally at the moment. There's a high volume of properties available, and unfortunately there's less prospective tenants looking. Even if people are still working full time, people are hibernating a bit, just in case.
Which is winter anyway.
Yeah,
so.
which is winter anyway, but obviously it is quieter than usual at the moment with regards to the amount of tenants looking and the amount of properties available. There's a few reasons for that, and probably, you know, two of the biggest reasons are a lot of apartments, especially, or properties, not just apartments, but properties that were being leased by way of short term, so Airbnb. Obviously, there's not a demand for that currently. There's not people coming from interstate and overseas. So a lot of the owners of those properties have decided to turn that investment property into a normal residential property, you know, for lease, long-term rental. So that's flooded the market, especially in the CBD, South Bank and Docklands areas. So it's quite competitive in those areas. Another reason is that, you know, if tenants have been affected by COVID and, you know, they need financial assistance, some of them have decided to end their tenancy, and, you know, if they were renting a property on their own, they've then decided to move in with, say, 3 friends, reducing their weekly rental costs, or move in with family and completely minimising their weekly rental costs. So that currently means there are more properties available. There's still inquiry coming through. Unfortunately, there's, you know, tenants are a bit spoilt for choice, prospective tenants at the moment. They're not competing to get their favourite property. They basically have run of the mill and they can pick which one is their favourite, and there's less competition. So really it all comes down to marketing. We're now looking at other avenues that we haven't so much focused on before with regards to advertising. So virtual tours, which have actually proved to be really effective. So rather than just having a floor plan and photos, prospective tenants can, via a link on the advertisement, literally have a walkthrough of the property. They'll be able to then see, okay, where's the kitchen in relation to the main bedroom, bathroom, that sort of thing. And that will, it almost weeds out the time wasters as well. Because, you know, previously we could have 10 groups come through and open for inspection on a Saturday, and maybe one group might show interest in it because it meets their requirements. They like the layout, whereas some of the other groups may not like that it's got a European laundry, or where that laundry is with regards to the main bedroom. And, you know, certain little things add up and it all makes a difference. So the virtual inspections have been really beneficial. We've also done video walkthroughs as well. So a video is taken of us walking through the property. That's emailed to inquiries. We talk them through the features of the property as we're going through and doing that. And that's been really effective as well, and has led to applications being received. I think more so now, prospective tenants are open to coming out and doing a private viewing of the property. It's a bit limited at the moment with regards to open for inspections, because there are certain rules around having pre-cleaning done before the viewing, how many people you can have in the property during the viewing per square metre, providing hand sanitizer, you know, having display notes as with regards to hygiene, etc. So we're finding that one-on-one private appointments are really quite effective, and more people are requesting the private inspections rather than wanting to attend. Attend a group viewing, just, you know, due to the current environment.
So similar to sales, is that people are starting to be re-educated in the way business is being done.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think it's a good environment, because once everyone understands it and plays by the rules, it goes pretty smoothly, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, similar to our pricing in properties for sale, we've seen some pressure on prices going down.
Yes.
Has that also impacted the rental market?
Look, it has, especially in those suburbs that have a lot of stock. So as I mentioned, the CBD, Docklands, South Bank, you know, some properties that might have been leased at $600 per week, an apartment fully furnished, are now advertised at $550 or slightly less. It just depends on the area.
Yeah.
Some properties we've had no issues with advertising and then receiving inquiries straight away, holding private viewings, leading it to being leased within 2 weeks. It just depends on the amount of stock available in that suburb at the time. When we contact our clients and inform them that tenants are vacating, we'll need to re-advertise. We also do, excuse me, we also do thorough research as to what's currently advertised in that area, similar, and what's recently leased in that area, similar.
So
because
giving them some comparables.
Giving them some comparables, because you know, you can look on realestate.com, Real Estate View, Domain, and you'll see what's advertised and the price. Doesn't mean it always leases for that asking price. So as agents, we have access to that historical data as to what it's actually leased for, and we compile that, and that's when we give our recommendation. At the moment, obviously, we're trying to achieve the same rental amount for our clients, but we usually inform our clients that within the first few days of advertising, we will know, okay, if the price is right by the amount of inquiry we've received. If we're not getting as much inquiry as we would like, we will report that back to the owner, and we can then discuss a rent reduction if need be. But it's really important at the moment, the quality of your advertisements, because, you know, two of the big factors that will lead to inquiries being received are the quality of your photos. So we're recommending professional photos where required, if interest is also a bit slow, and the amount of photos as well. Having things such as a floor plan is also a really good point of difference, as typically that's been more of a sales advertising technique, naturally, but it's also quite beneficial for rentals as well. So people can gauge the size of the rooms, the layout as well, and the virtual tours also assist with that.
So look, again, your property manager is your partner, and so again, the advice given to landlords is important. So there's a discussion point, but also too, as we always do, you're here, your team is here to assist, but also to give advice, and that's really important to take that on board as well.
It is. And look, at the end of the day, it is the owner's call, whether they wish to reduce the price or, you know, whatever the situation is, and we will simply make suggestions that we think may assist. Obviously, we're dealing with a large amount of properties, and we do this day to day. So we will give our recommendation, but at the end of the day, it is the owner's decision as to whether or not they wish to reduce the price or not, and we can go from there. We are finding as well that, you know, if a property is advertised at a certain price, we might show a group through and they might express interest in putting in a slightly lower offer. We're not telling them that that's not possible. We're saying, send your application through, list what you're offering, and we can discuss that with the owner. There's no point agreeing there's no point confirming with a prospective tenant that yes, the owner will accept $550 rather than $570 per week if we don't know the status of their application. Are they suitable? Are they employed? You know, do they have good rental history? So we're not ruling it out. We're just telling prospective tenants to send their application through. We'll then vet that application and we'll put it forward to the owner, and then it turns into a negotiation process again. And we can go backwards and forwards between each party as well. So that's another point that's quite crucial at the moment with regards to tenants applying. In the current environment, we're pretty strict with processing applications as it is, but we understand that owners are quite concerned that they want to make sure whoever is applying and they're approving is financially stable. Owners sort of been quite concerned about approving someone, then moving into a property, and then a month later they fall into financial hardship, meaning the tenant. And it's not so much that they're concerned that their rent's not going to be paid, but they're also concerned about, you know, the other interested party being the tenant and the impact that will have on them. So we're double checking, triple checking everything with regards to applications. We are also requesting last 3 pay slips as well as calling the employer, just to confirm that yes, they are still employed full time. No employee can guarantee that things won't change, but we seem to be coming out, touch wood, the other end of things gradually, and things are slightly going back to normal with regards to hospitality and all that area. So we're just double checking, triple checking applications to make sure every party's best interest is.
So really for us, I think for you and I, you know, we're in the property market and we're all experiencing the same environment, which is challenging at times. So really ours has always been, you know, we deal with what we've got at the moment, be confident that we're going to get through it. How long is that going to be? Well, we hope the signs are we're probably not going to go in as deep as everyone was expecting. So that's a good thing. So again, confidently, we're trying to push through until later on in the year, and in time, things will come back. And we're talking about property prices coming back, rental prices will come back. But at the moment, a tenant, you're better off having a tenant paying rent than having it vacant.
That's correct, yeah, at the moment, because as mentioned, there's less prospective tenants looking to move. So if you are able to negotiate a rent reduction with your tenant, that's great. But as I mentioned, you also have to make sure you're covering your own costs,
sure.
and you're not then facing financial hardship yourself. So these are all the things that your property agent is here to discuss with you, and they're here to advise and obviously negotiate on your behalf. But yeah, at the moment, yes, I would say you're better off having a tenant in the property, even if it is at a slightly reduced rate, rather than having it vacant, because chances are it may sit vacant for a little while. And I'm not talking about an extended period of time, months, but you won't have a quick turnaround as you usually would.
And as you know, we've experienced competition will push prices up.
Yes.
And once competition comes back, prices will start pushing upwards as well.
Start to lift again. That's correct.
Okay. Well, I'm done at this end.
Thank you, Andrew. So thank you everyone for attending the webinar. We didn't want it to go for too long because we understand that a lot of you may be on your lunch breaks and logging in to see us today, but we really appreciate you all coming along and having a view and listening to what we have to discuss. And as mentioned, if you do have further questions, please do email us or give the office a call. If you have a question with regards to a specific situation, we're more than happy to brainstorm that with you, whether we manage your property or not, or whether we have it for sale for you or not. It's besides the point. We're happy to give advice where we can, because we understand that it can be confusing times with regards to rentals and sales. So we appreciate you all coming through, and any questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch.
Fantastic. Thanks for
Thank you so much.
Okay.